This is Daniel Windham from Death or Glory Press Productions, where we review board games, punk rock, and interesting people in Lincoln, Nebraska. What you're looking at here is an unfinished punk rock documentary I made actually around 2010. At that particular time, I was actually living in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I came all the way from Omaha, Nebraska, and I was particularly interested in the differences as far as straight edge and punk rock and what hardcore music was. Hardcore music was a new thing to me. I'd never really heard of that in Nebraska. As a matter of fact, from my point of knowledge, the only thing we knew about straight edge was inside the little like liner notes inside Minor Threat's complete discography. The only thing we knew about punk rock was Rancid and NoFX, which really is a very small palette when you consider the whole world of punk rock music. So while I was actually at this event in actually it was Durham, North Carolina, I interviewed bands. I asked them what they thought about hardcore music. I asked them what they thought about hardcore dancing. I asked them what they thought about straight edge. So what you're seeing here is kind of the best parts of that actual documentary. So it's very interesting to watch. It's also a very good time capsule of what hardcore music and kind of what the straight edge scene looked like in 2010. I think it's going to be really interesting for people that were involved in that scene to watch this documentary and take a look back as to how things really were versus how they are now. I'm actually not 100% sure how hardcore music is now, so if anyone wants to leave kind of links in the comments of newer upcoming bands and what things are looking like, I'd love to read them and kind of know. So I hope you guys enjoyed this documentary. More importantly than actually subscribing is if you just share it. I have no active social media, like no Facebook, no Instagram. So if you share it, we can kind of spread it by word of mouth, which would be super helpful. I hope you enjoy the documentary.
Jordan lives in, yeah, that's right. He lives in the Walkertown, Winston area. So Triad. Let's just go with the Triad. Be safe. Not offend anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've seen you guys twice now, and to me, hopefully you're not too offended. But if the Crusades had a soundtrack, of like people getting their heads chopped off, it would sound like Advent.
Without the completely unnecessary violence of the Crusades. Yeah. I get you.
So, why do you feel the need? Like, why the abrasiveness? Like, is it just what you do, or is it a style you're into, or just?
We came up. I didn't come up in. I didn't. You know. I'm a middle class kid.
Yeah.
From Kernersville, North Carolina. I came up in an awesome home, but it was when I found punk and hardcore and metal at its very abrasive, in a very abrasive era in the 90s that completely turned me around.
Yeah.
And I began to figure out who I am, and I think Johnny came up in the same time frame. Earth Crisis, Strife, All Out War, Buried Alive, Strong Arm, Turmoil, Living Sack, For the Love Of, all those bands. Like that's what I loved, and that's what I really grew to. I don't know. That was the core of what the music that I listened to. So it influenced me in sound and in the ferocity of how they sang about things and felt about things. They're on fire about what they believe, whether it be straight edge, veganism, or their beliefs in God, or their belief that there was no God. I think that's what.
There's a passion behind it.
There definitely is. You can say a lot of things about modern hardcore, but passion is generally one of them that's always there, at least from what I've seen. Were you guys, were you into Christianity before you were into hardcore? Did they both kind of melt into each other?
I grew up going to church. It doesn't necessarily mean that I was into that, but I grew up going to church, and so in that respect, like, yeah, I can say that I was into it, and I think I really did feel like without anything that my parents tried to press on me, because my mom's not like that, and my dad,
Neither am mine.
my dad's not like that at all either. Like, my dad actually has come into his own faith within the last 10 years, and my mom a little while before him, but they never pressed anything on me that they let me decide who I wanted to be, and this is, so yeah, I guess I decided that's what I believe, and last year in high school, that's kind of like where I've been since then.
I guess I came. I was the same way. Like, I somewhat grew up in the church. Parents divorced. Whole big situation. Kind of when I was a young kid, and so I didn't per se come into Christianity with hardcore. I was always around Christianity, and I was somewhat always around punk rock since like the 6th, 7th grade. I guess I didn't find any Christian hardcore bands until after I was a Christian.
Yeah.
Because,
they have festivals and skateboarding.
But it was fairly,
and stuff, yeah.
as underground as hardcore was,
yeah.
Christianity and hardcore is even more underground.
Yeah.
If you can imagine that. And,
at least it was.
It was, definitely. It was, and it was never like, I guess, like a huge thing. Like, there weren't that many bands. And then when I found the bands that were Christians, it blew my mind, because there weren't that many. Like, if you think about it, there was Strong Arm, Overcome, or Focus, Unashamed. Like there weren't that many bands.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just like any day. Like, they weren't. A lot of people didn't give them respect because of their beliefs, but I slowly found it
because
after
somehow they were invalid because they believed that there was a God.
It's weird, but
it made them artistically invalid because of their religious views, which is kind of lame.
In hardcore, anyone who talks about Christians shouldn't be in hardcore, or people who believe in God shouldn't be in hardcore, should really step back, because Bad Brains were probably one of their favorite bands, and they had a God. They were Rastafarian. They believed in Jah. Cro-Mags. If anyone in a hardcore show says they haven't listened to the Cro-Mags, they're probably a liar. And the Cro-Mags are a Christian band. They're awesome. They're an awesome band. Shelter, 108. Like, you can go on and on.
Yeah.
Bands that,
and Ian Mackay was raised by Presbyterians, I believe.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Like, so faith and spirituality has always been in hardcore. People just choose to give a negative sneer at Christianity for some reason. So a lot of those bands,
it's the majority in this country.
And I wouldn't even say it's, people use the term majority. If you break it down to actual true believers, it's definitely not the majority.
You call yourself Christian, doesn't mean you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was really underground, and still to this day, the bands that got me into hardcore were like Sick of It All, Madball. Like, I didn't grow up in like the Minor Threat times, things like that. Like, I came up in the so like those are still my favorite bands, and then I found Christian hardcore.
Awesome. What is I asked this because the term, like, since its conception in '83, basically when SSD took it over, and then it kind of spread out. What is straight edge to you guys? Like, how do you define it? Even if you're not it per se, or are. Or...
I think straight edge is.
We both are.
Yeah, we both are. We've been for a while and won't be till the day we die. It's a very important thing. In no way am I ashamed of it, ever will be. But I think straight edge, it's a really simple idea of living pure of the addiction and control of drugs, alcohol, sex. For some reason, people forget that. I think a lot, like that you can be addicted to a substance. Like, I think one of the coolest things that I've ever read was, I think it was on Earth Crisis All Out War record, they had a huge write-up about sex and abortion and the outcomes of sex, and how you can actually use that as an addiction, as something that controls you. It's really simple. It's not a hard thing. There is definitely I wouldn't say someone who just doesn't do drugs or drinks is straight edge, because it's a whole subculture that revolves around hardcore, but in its purest form, it's not being controlled by a substance. Living free so you can see things, feel things, hear things, believe things
With an unclouded mind.
Exactly, the unclouded mind.
Yeah. The other question I have, because I was born in '86, but I'm from Nebraska, and this hardcore didn't exist. There were records, modern straight edge records came in to DC by the time I left in 2005. So I had a really privileged life though. I saw the UK Subs, I saw
Nice.
Motorhead, I saw Less Than Jake, I saw Choking Victim, Leftover Crack. I saw a lot of cool shows growing up. Why did the slam dancing evolve to how it is now?
I think, obviously I'm no hardcore historian, but I think it's, to me, like, this is how I can separate punk rock and hardcore and metal, is punk rock was the FU attitude. I love punk rock, but there was no, it was everything sucks, here's the problem, and the person who caused this problem, screw you. To me, it wasn't, here's the problem, let's find the answer, and let's stop this problem at any cost. And to me, that's how hardcore differed from punk rock and metal. When metal was essentially the same way, metal was just a big FU to everything.
And hardcore only lasted 3 years, 86? And this stuff seems to have been going on since the early 90s. So.
Yeah, and to me, I think, I never think hardcore died. I think hardcore has just been growing and growing, it's becoming stronger and stronger and more relevant as it matures and grows. It pulls influence from punk rock and from metal, but it's like hardcore bands like just to say that sucks. I'm gonna say that sucks, and I'm gonna stop it or try to stop it and keep fighting it until you either get jaded and give up, or until you die and you hold on to it. Like, that's the difference to me.
So I think that dance, that mosh stuff, is an expression of
of that anger and that rage, and it's aggression. It's beautiful. It's like, it's a beautiful thing. Whatever happens.
Whatever Derek says is true.
Whatever Derek says. Derek has his face tattooed, so anyone else in that room that doesn't have a face tattooed is not.
Yeah.
That's what's up. Pain and Suffering, man. Pain and Suffering, for those of you that don't know, was supposed to play tonight. They've been around, when did they start? 88, I think.
Wow.
The Pain and Suffering was supposed to play this. They're awesome. A lot of people, they think of Suicidal Tendencies and Biohazard as the pioneers of metallic hardcore. But dude, Pain and Suffering, if you ask any of those bands, they're gonna say that Pain and Suffering was the band that got them into it. And for some reason they never got the credit. They put out, I don't think they even put out a CD. Everything was vinyl or actual cassette tape. And so look up Pain and Suffering.
I don't know how to find them. There is.
Yeah.
If it's on Google, if it's on the internet, I'm sure there's a way to find it, or some kid on a forum. He's archived everything in his spare time. And
Scotty's not from North Carolina. Scotty's from Connecticut?
Yes, son.
Yeah. So Scotty knows the dudes in Pain and Suffering. I think actually he was friends with a friend or a nephew or something like that. I got in touch with them. They were gonna play, but all those dudes have kids, work construction, they're just legit dudes, and they just didn't work it out.
Yes, Pain and Suffering.
So everyone look out for Pain and Suffering.
You guys have anything else you feel you should say about your band, or what's going on, or record releases, or?
Man, what are we doing?
You just got a record out on the MySpace.
We just put out a record in September.
It's
8th. Called Naked and Cold, and I think it was I'm glad to say that it was the best representation of who we are, and we were able to get out a lot of the ideas that we had, and I don't know, I feel like that CD is our best so far, and we are in the process of beginning to see what new songs will sound like and new parts, and we're trying to put some stuff together, and but we're just playing shows with a couple different bands this year. We're playing shows with Reign Supreme and Fingers Crossed at the end of April, beginning of May, and doing some stuff with a band called Bleeding Through, and we're doing
like East Coast run.
East Coast stuff, and I don't know, man. We'd like to get out to the West Coast when we can, but you know, we don't try to use this as an excuse, but we're kind of older than some people, so we have kids, and we have kids. We got a little beautiful baby.
Cool.
3 months. She's awesome. Yeah, Joe and I are both married.
HR, I love you, girl. All right.
Yeah, both of us are married. We have mortgages.
So we're trying to be as responsible as we can, but
without turning this into like a business.
Yeah, we don't want
to
be that.
That's when the purity comes out of it. We don't like to have like these.
We're not trying to make this a full-time job, which I can't say that that's the wrong thing to do, but that's not my place. But we want to keep it as pure as we can for ourselves. So you might see us on the West Coast this year. You might not. If you don't, we'll come out. Yeah. We'll come out eventually, and we want to write another CD, and we just want to continue to do this because we love it. So that's what Advent's doing.
All right.
We love everybody.
Everybody.
Much respect. If you don't understand us, that's okay, because we don't understand all of you guys.
What's your name?
My name's Ian. I sing in a band called Overlooked from the Carolinas. So some of us from Wilmington, some of us are from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
I personally know Wilmington is kind of like a violent prone kind of place, more so than the other scenes. Like, does that work in at all, or is it like, because like when I go to like shows, there's always these guys drinking beers, talking about Iron Maiden, and I get scared real quick.
It has its times. A couple of years ago, it was a lot worse than it is now. You know, it's kind of calmed down a lot. A lot of those guys have just gotten older, and
they've stopped going to shows.
Yeah, I mean, either stop going to shows or they just, you know, hang out at the bar or whatever. And, you know, unless someone plays like an Earth Crisis cover.
Yeah, and then things go crazy.
Yeah, they're not doing anything. But, no, I wouldn't say it's that bad anymore.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself straight edge?
No, I used to be. But I ended up breaking edge.
Yeah.
So, I was straight edge for like the better part of 6 years.
It's okay. I knock back a beer occasionally, so I'm not gonna hold it against you. Did you? Why is the definition? Do you feel so different from like what Minor Threat started? At least that's how I've kind of noticed it.
People interpret things their own way, and especially something like straight edge. People see it, they think they can latch onto it, and then it just, straight edge was never really a defined thing from, you know, my understanding of how Ian Mackay wanted it to be. So it kind of got put up for interpretation whether or not he wanted it to be that way, and then you know, people just went with it from there. And you know, I think a lot, even some of my favorite bands, you know, but people started kind of pushing it as a more militant way, you know, like Judge and bands like that, making it more of a lifestyle choice and, you know, a way to live your entire life and not just maybe like a mindset for, you know, a temporary amount of time or something. So, I don't know. I mean, I love straight edge. It's awesome. It's awesome for kids to connect to when they first get into the scene. They want something to care about because, you know, that's what hardcore is. You know, you're screaming about all the things you care about and all the things you dislike, and it's very easy to just, you know, be like, wow, I don't want to drink, and you know, just kind of latch on to that and, you know, hold it close to your heart, which is what I did for a long time. And then, you know, people just change. Some people change with it and they stay straight edge, and, you know, some people kind of not grow out of it because that makes it seem like they're jaded, which some people do get jaded on it. But, you know, they just sort of, their ideals change, not necessarily their morals. So
The something I found interesting growing up, I'm from Nebraska, and the punk scene there was no hardcore scene. It didn't really exist. Why is the slam dancing so different? Where did it evolve? Does anyone have any ideas? Because if you look at like decline of Western civilization and see the circle jerks, that's what I grew up in, and the results generally the same. People get fucked up, but it seems with what is done in there, it's just a lot more malicious and it's a lot more intentional.
I think it depends on where people are from, what kind of music they listen to. Hardcore and metal kind of have gone hand in hand for a while now. I don't know if that was the original intention, but it happened, and I think a lot of things in hardcore transferred over to metal and vice versa. So it was, you know, metal kids and stuff who would go nuts, you know, for heavier bands, and I think everything just kind of melded together. And then, you know, if certain bands are from a certain area, you know, kids are gonna, you know, mosh or, you know, run around or dance in a certain way. And I don't know, I think that's where it comes from personally. You know, it's all relative.
Yeah.
So,
where
you know,
you are and what you pick up on.
Some people are nice about it, and some people aren't. And I think, you know, it all depends on who they're with too, because some people use this as a way to try and look tough. Yeah.
So what are the future plans for your band?
We just recorded a new EP a couple months ago. That's going to be out this summer. Our van broke down, so we've just been.
When doesn't that happen?
We've just been playing regional shows and kind of with our friends, and, you know, sharing equipment. And this summer we're going to do a lot of weekends, and you know, try and do another East Coast tour. And our guitar player has 2 semesters of college left, and then after that we're just trying to tour as much as possible.
Cool.
So just, you know, spread the good word.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
What about that? Well, Foundation's cool and all, but I mean, what can be said about a band that's on the same label as Soul Patrol?
God!
Cool.
Oh, blood belt!
Oh, what are you gonna do? Post it? No, I love Foundation. Give it up for them.
All right, man. What's your name?
My name is Greg.
Your name's Greg, and you're in the Mongoloids, right?
Yes, I sing for the Mongols
How long have you guys been in a band?
since August of 2005.
Yeah. So then I've kind of asked all the people as of late is kind of what is your own definition of straight edge, and kind of how does it apply to you?
It only applies to me. I mean, that's what it is. It's my choice. You know, could choose to live a life full of, PMA and
Nice Bad Brains quote.
a life drug free, and that's kind of just how I am about it. I don't care what anybody else is doing. I just care about myself, and that's what straight edge is to me. It's about my own decisions in my own life, and not about focusing on other people's.
So you don't think like there's like a judgment as to like necessarily who's edge and who's not? It just matters kind of like
I would never,
how you're doing.
I never think about that ever. I would never think about who's edge.
That's a really interesting perspective because I've heard a lot of different ones
I
tonight.
would only think about myself and why I'm straight edge and why I continue to be straight edge. It's not, what other people do doesn't affect my own. It's my own decision. I'm not gonna want to force what my thoughts are to somebody else, because that's not really, life drug free. It's my life.
The other question I had is, I grew up in a punk rock scene in Nebraska, and basically we had Hellcat Records, and that's what came in. So we never had hardcore, not like it is now. We never had the hardcore dancing. And to me, like even as a younger guy, I'm 23 now, so I guess I'm still young, but it always seemed a lot more violent and aggressive. So it's something I've never wanted to participate in. Why do you think it formed into what it is, as opposed to where it came from when you look at like the Bad Brains or like the Minor Threat shows and stuff like that?
I think it's the same thing, kind of like Bad Brains and Circle Jerks. It's about, you live this life of, let's say you live, you're working all week, you're going to school all week, and all these things that add to your life.
You just get pissed.
What annoys you about different things. It's not about, even, I don't think it's about, anybody can get mad at something, whether you're, a rich person or a poor person or a moderate level person. Everyone has their things that annoy them, and it builds up throughout the week, and then you go to a hardcore show, you go to a punk show, and you let it out. I don't think there's any certain type of that, whether you're jumping up and down or you're spinning in the air or laying on the ground.
So you'd all see it as the same thing,
I don't think there's a difference between any of it. It's, you're throwing yourself off a stage. It's all one
thing.
One piece of, letting out the aggression of your everyday, and, you do it at a hardcore show where everyone is doing the same thing, and it turns into, it's a positive thing and not necessarily a negative thing.
Where do you think, I guess, the hardcore sound developed as we know it now?
What do I think is, I don't know what you mean.
Well, like a lot of people mention, like everyone I've interviewed, like they mention like Municipal Waste as like hardcore bands of the early 90s, like Biohazard and things like that, is like really big influences into their own sound, which is stuff I never really picked up on growing up in that kind of Hellcat.
Like what bands?
Scene.
Like, started more aggressive music?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Probably
that's
like the
stimulated now.
Bad Brains.
Just because to me personally, like when I hear hardcore, what's defined as hardcore music, I don't hear like, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but I don't hear Minor Threat in these bands. I definitely hear the straight edge movement, and I don't really hear Black Flag. I hear its own unique sound and style.
You don't have to hear those bands for, if it wasn't for those bands, like if it wasn't for the Germs, if it wasn't for the Bad Brains, if it wasn't for Minor Threat, then it wouldn't be what it is today easily. So I would say the first
it's always
bands that
there.
really spawned and changed how things, worked were definitely, Bad Brains and Germs especially, like the, late 70s, they were
kind of kick-started it all.
In terms of aggressive music, like 100% easily. I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to hear those bands in other bands, but if it wasn't for those bands for other bands to build upon, then you would never get to the Biohazards or the I don't know what other bands you use, Cro-Mags. Bands,
stuff like that.
John Joseph says it on stage.
Post 1986 hardcore.
John Joseph says it all the time. If it wasn't for the Bad Brains, he wouldn't be who he is. It's a good outlook.
Their first album is just fucking phenomenal.
Of course.
Do you got any other plans with your band? What you guys are doing? Just keep going on tour?
Yeah, right now we're on tour with Death Threat and Death Before Dishonor and The War. And we're on this tour until April 24th. And then we're home for a week, and we go to Europe for 3.5 weeks. Then we come home from that, and we do another U.S. tour that will actually be back in Raleigh with Bitter End, Donnybrook, and Lionheart. And we'll be back here at the brewery in Raleigh.
Since you've mentioned, I have to ask, do you have a favorite hardcore album, like of the early 1980s scene?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a hard question.
It's a hard question. I don't really think about things like that. I have a lot of records I like, but
that's it.
I don't really focus on.
All right, cool.